They thought I was drifting, fading really, just an old woman with soft slippers and softer thoughts. But I was watching, listening, waiting. When my own daughter said, "You're not on the contract, Mom," I smiled. Because they didn't know. I had already packed a suitcase, signed a deed, and planned my exit. This is the story of how I disappeared, and why I had to. It started with rhubarb. Of all things. A few stalks in the back garden had ripened early, and I was out there in my robe, pruning shears in one hand, a chipped ceramic bowl in the other. That patch by the fence used to be Paul's pride. He'd mulch it like it was sacred. After he passed, I kept it going mostly for the smell. You don't forget the smell of rhubarb in spring. Tangy. Wet. A little mean. I was bent low, squinting in the morning haze, when I heard tires crunching the gravel. My daughter Jessica's Subaru. She always brakes too hard. The car door slammed like punctuation. "Morning, Mom," she called out, all brightness and efficiency. She had that fake nurse practitioner smile on, like she was about to ask if I'd considered switching to low-sodium soup. I straightened up, wiped my hands on my robe. "Didn't know you were stopping by." She held up a Trader Joe's bag like a peace offering. "Thought I'd bring you some of that yogurt you like." The one with the flax. It wasn't the one I liked, not even close. But I let her in, because that's what mothers do. Inside, she bustled around like she'd misplaced something in my house and needed to find it fast. She opened drawers, checked the calendar I keep by the fridge, tapped her fingers on the mail stack like it was coded in Morse. "We've been thinking," she said eventually, leaning on the counter like it was a therapist's couch. "It might be good if Alex and I helped a little more. You've been alone here since Dad passed." "We worry," I said nothing. Let the silence fill the room like steam. Then she added, "Maybe we could help manage some of your administrative stuff. Bills, recertifications, that sort of thing." I knew what she meant. I've known Jessica long enough to read her real sentences under the polite ones. Help meant control. Worry meant agenda. I told her I was doing just fine. She smiled, and I could see the crack behind it. "Of course you are. Just let us be there for you, okay?" Later that week, Alex showed up. He never came alone, so that already told me something. He sat on the porch swing like it was a throne, legs spread too wide, phone in hand. He called me Ma in that tone that means, "We're about to talk business." "We should really be looking at your taxes this year," he said, not asking. "You've got some equity in this place. Could be working for you." I looked at the rhubarb, half trimmed, wilting in the bowl by my side. "It's working just fine right where it is," I said. He laughed like I'd made a joke. Then he leaned in a little. "You know, property in this area's hot right now. Especially since the rezoning announcements. Lotta interest in large parcels. Developers sniffing around?" I blinked. "Rezoning?" "They sent out the notices," he said quickly. "It's all public. Nothing shady. But if you hold too long, you could miss the peak value. Just saying I made us both tea, because that's what you do when you're not ready to scream." We sat in silence while the wind rustled the old sycamore by the back fence. The roots of that tree run under the whole property. Paul planted it the year Jessica was born. Its branches have watched everything we built. I sipped my tea and imagined Alex trying to sell it off for square footage. That night, I couldn't sleep, not just because of my back, though that was doing its usual chorus. Something deeper sat in my chest, like a stone that wouldn't dissolve. The next morning, I found the zoning notice buried in a stack of flyers on the credenza, folded neatly between a pizza menu and a hearing aid discount. Jessica had placed it there, not mailed, placed, in my house, without a word. It wasn't until the following Sunday during brunch, Jessica had brought gluten-free bagels and fake cream cheese, which no one touched, that she dropped the next breadcrumb. "You know, Mrs. Langley down the street just moved into assisted living," she said, pouring me coffee. "It's beautiful there." Lakeview. Full-time staff. She has Alzheimer's, I reminded her. Jessica stirred her cup too long, not meeting my eyes. Still, she planned ahead. Some people don't. That was the moment. The click of the lock turning in my mind. This wasn't about yogurt or taxes or being helpful. This was about inheritance, about erasing me from the picture while keeping the house, the land, the money. And I'd be damned if I let anyone treat me like a soft old cushion to sit on until they got what they wanted. But I didn't show it. I smiled, nodded, and offered her more coffee. Let them think I was slow. Let them think I was slipping. It would only make what came next hit harder. It was a Tuesday when Jessica came back with a manila folder and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She sat at the kitchen table like it was a conference room and set the folder down between us like we were co-signing on a used Honda. Just a few documents, she said, flipping through them with perfectly manicured fingers. Routine stuff. The electric bill, bank authorization, nothing urgent. I took the folder, nodded like I always do, and waited for her to leave. When she finally did, after checking the fridge for expired milk and making a comment about the dust on the piano, I brought the papers into the sunroom. I keep an old desk there. Real wood. Scratch top. Paul's scratch, actually. He once spilled ink while trying to write a letter to the city about a pothole. I laid everything out under the afternoon light. That's when I noticed the language. Not just authorization or banking convenience, but terms like temporary irrevocable trust, vesting in name of transferee, and my favorite, residual beneficiary clause, which in English means, you'll be dead soon, so let's make this tidy. There were signature lines already printed with my name, slightly faded as if pre-printed weeks ago. I didn't sign. Instead, I drove to the library the next morning. Jessica thought I'd stopped driving. I let her think that. Let her believe the cataracts were worse than they were. But I'd renewed my license last fall, and the old Camry still started with a little groan and a lot of will. Marta was behind the desk, gray hair now, reading glasses perched low. She used to be a corporate lawyer before she retired into books and overdue notices. When I handed her the folder, her expression didn't change, but I saw the muscles in her jaw shift. She skimmed silently for a minute, then closed the folder like it might bite. Did you sign any of this? No. She nodded slowly. They're trying to move your house into a trust. But it's not for your benefit, I gathered. They've got you listed as a temporary resident and them as co-trustees. You're a placeholder, Helen. A speed bump. They're trying to sell from under you. The blood in my ears roared, but I kept my voice level. Is it legal? Not if you don't sign. But if they're bold enough to bring this to your kitchen table, they're planning to. I thanked her, took copies, and left the originals with her for safekeeping. Just in case. That afternoon, Alex came by with more papers. Hey, Ma, he said, too casual. Just need your signature on this quick little form. It's about electronic authorization for the real estate attorney. Speeds things up. You don't even have to be there. I took the paper and read the top line. $64 million. I blinked. What's this? He scratched the back of his neck. Projected value. It's nothing. Standard placeholder. Legalese. I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. A house like mine is worth maybe $900,000. He chuckled. It's not just the house anymore. There's development happening. Investors. Whole blocks are going up. I said I'd need time. He tried to hide his frustration. Okay, but the sooner we get this rolling, the better for everyone. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and felt my bones vibrate with something that wasn't age. It was fury, yes, but also strategy. They thought I was slow, that I couldn't understand documents or values, or what a trust meant. They thought a few gray hairs and a prescription bottle meant I couldn't count. They forgot who taught Jessica to balance a checkbook, who handled Paul's hospice paperwork without blinking. I wasn't confused, but if they needed me to be slow, I could be slower than molasses in January. Let them push. Let them hand me more documents. Let them think I'd crumble. Because I'd just started building my own little backup plan. Something small. Something far away. A place where no one knew my name, but the deed already had it. The next morning, I made banana bread. Not because anyone asked or because I had company coming, Lord knows that ship sailed, but because it gave my hands something to do. Stirring, folding, watching the oven light flicker across the batter rising in its pan. It helped quiet the tremor in my right thumb that had started up again since Alex dropped that $64 million bomb on my kitchen table. I was cleaning up when I heard Jessica's voice outside. It's fine. She won't question it. She never does. I froze. Not because she said it. I'd already suspected as much. But because she wasn't on the phone. She was on the porch. I moved silently toward the screen door and looked through the side window. Jessica stood with a woman in a tailored navy suit, hair in a sharp bun, tablet under one arm. They weren't looking at the garden. They were looking at my front door like it belonged to them. She'll sign, Jessica said again, low and firm. She's getting forgetful. Sometimes she repeats herself. The doctor said, that's when I opened the door. Doctor said what? Jessica turned around so fast you'd think she'd seen a ghost. Oh, Mom, I didn't realize you were up. It's 11:30. The woman beside her smiled the way waitresses do when you send back a salad twice. Good morning, Mrs. McKay. I'm Brenda Linden, from County Social. Just a standard wellness visit, I stepped aside. You'll want to take notes in the kitchen. I just baked. Brenda sat. She asked about my medication, my daily routine, whether I sometimes felt disoriented or nervous. Jessica chimed in at all the right moments, mentioning I'd left the kettle on last month, forgot my library password, called the dog by the wrong name. I don't have a dog, I said. Exactly, Jessica smiled. Brenda jotted that down. I played along, let my voice wander a little, asked what day it was, then corrected myself. Later, Brenda asked to see the guest bedroom. Jessica led her down the hall, and I slipped into the garage, grabbed the worn manila folder, and walked across the lawn to my neighbor Louise's house. I asked her to hold on to it, just while the storm passes. Back home, I stood by the sink, watching the two women return. Brenda gave me a business card. We'll follow up soon. After they left, I called Marta. They're laying the groundwork, I told her, trying to get me ruled incompetent. She didn't curse. Marta was more of a slow exhale type, but I could hear the fire under her silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I made tea, sat on the back steps, watched the wind rattle the empty swing where Jessica used to sit when she was 5, hair in pigtails, eating orange slices. I didn't cry, but I felt something settle inside me, something heavy and locked tight. The next morning, I drove to a clinic on the other side of town. Not the one Jessica picked, a real one. Quiet lobby, real plants, no pamphlets about memory health propped like traps. I told the doctor about the tremor, the forgetfulness, the panic I sometimes got at night. She was kind, asked the right questions, sent me for blood work. You're showing signs of anxiety, she said gently. Common at your age, especially after loss. I'm not losing anything, I said. She gave me a prescription, low dose, non-habit forming, and a referral to a specialist, just to cover her bases. You seem sharper than half my staff, she smiled. I smiled back. Don't tell them that. The week after, a second letter came from a title company I didn't recognize. I called the number. The woman on the phone asked if I was confirming availability for closing. Closing on what? Your property, the development purchase. Your name's not on the seller's side, but we always reach out to residents listed at the address. My hands went cold. I asked for a copy of the contract. They emailed it within 10 minutes. I opened the file, and there it was. My address, my land, my home. With only 2 sellers, Jessica McKay and Alexander McKay. My name wasn't anywhere, except as current occupant. The walls didn't fall, the house didn't shake, but something inside me cracked so quietly, it might have gone unnoticed if I weren't listening for it. I printed that contract. I called Marta, and I made another call. To the lawyer I'd met once at a neighborhood fundraiser, a woman named Franklin, with a spine like tempered steel and a voice that could flatten drywall. "Do you want to stop the sale?" she asked, "or burn it to the ground?" I thought about that for a moment. Then I said, "Both." Because they thought they were building an empire. But they didn't realize the land beneath it had a heartbeat. Mine. The morning of the closing, I wore Paul's old watch, the one with the cracked leather strap and the minute hand that lagged just enough to make him tap it twice before believing the time. I'd kept it in my dresser all these years, waiting for a day when I'd need to remember how calm he was in the face of utter chaos. That day had arrived. Jessica texted me early. "Just a formality today." Don't stress, I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed in my nicest navy slacks, the blouse with pearl buttons I'd ironed the night before, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on makeup. Not a lot. Just enough to remind everyone I still knew how to present myself when it mattered. Franklin picked me up in her hybrid. She didn't talk much, which I appreciated. The air inside her car smelled like eucalyptus and old books. In the back seat sat her assistant, a young man named Liam with a satchel full of case files and a nervous twitch in his left eye. I liked him immediately. The closing was held at a midtown real estate office, the kind with gray carpet and abstract art no one really looked at. We were 10 minutes early. Jessica and Alex were already there, seated beside the buyer's attorney and a woman in a tight suit who introduced herself as the seller-side agent. She smiled at me like I was the guest of honor at a wake. "Oh, you look lovely today, Mrs. McKay," she said. "I always do," I replied, and took my seat. They handed me a packet of documents. I didn't touch it. Jessica leaned forward. "Mom, it's just a few initials and signatures. This is going to set us up for life. You'll be so comfortable." I turned to the realtor. "Am I listed on any of these documents as an owner or seller?" She blinked. "No, but the McKays are listed as—" "I'm a McKay," I said, "since 1972. The room shifted. The buyer's attorney looked up from his laptop. Jessica smiled tightly. "Mom, we've gone over this." "No, we haven't. You handed me documents you hoped I'd sign without reading. You brought a social worker into my home to question my competence. You tried to convince a doctor I was losing my mind." She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. Not angry, just firm. "I'd like to introduce my legal counsel," I said, motioning to Franklin. Franklin stood, calm as winter frost. "As of this morning, my client, Helen McKay, has filed an injunction to halt the transfer of this property. We're also submitting evidence of attempted fraud, coercion, and the unauthorized use of her name and address in contractual documents." She placed a folder on the table. "Here's a copy of the signed power of attorney the McKays tried to use, signed with a forged signature, verified by a handwriting expert. There's also a transcript of a recorded conversation between Mrs. McKay and County Social Services, in which the investigator admits to being pressured to falsify cognitive assessments." Jessica had gone pale. Alex's jaw clenched so hard I thought he might break a crown. Franklin turned to the buyer's attorney. "Unless your client is interested in becoming entangled in a lawsuit involving elder financial abuse and title fraud, I'd suggest they terminate this deal immediately." The room was silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above us. Then the buyer's attorney quietly closed his laptop. "That will not be necessary," he said. The realtor looked like she wanted to disappear into her heels. Jessica didn't say a word. She just stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was, like she'd never seen me fully upright, in control, not wearing a housecoat and slippers. I stood, buttoned my coat. I won't be signing anything today, I said. Or ever. And then I walked out of that office, past the reception desk, past the potted ficus that looked like it hadn't been watered in months, and out into the air. The sun hit my face, and for the first time in a long while, I felt taller than my shadow. In the car, Franklin didn't say much. Liam passed me a small envelope, copies of the documents I'd requested to be notarized post-meeting. Inside was one more paper I hadn't told Jessica about. The clean deed to a small stucco house in New Mexico. 2 bedrooms, 1 story, a red door and a porch swing that would be mine. I had bought it 3 months ago under my maiden name, just in case. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table with the deed to my New Mexico house in front of me, a cup of lukewarm tea at my elbow, and a silence in the room that felt almost sacred, not the heavy silence of grief. Paul's been gone a year now, and that silence I know too well, but the kind of silence that comes after surviving a storm and realizing the roof held. For the next few days, I kept to my routines. Morning walk around the block, crossword at 11, tuna sandwich, half an apple. Nothing flashy. Let Jessica wonder what I'd do next. I didn't call her. Didn't answer when she did. She left 2 voicemails, both eerily chipper. Just checking in. Hope you're doing well. The second one added, let's not let lawyers ruin the family. That one made me laugh. Franklin had filed the injunction papers, but she didn't stop there. At her suggestion, we sent a complaint directly to the district attorney's office. It included everything: fake documents, attempted manipulation of a cognitive assessment, pressure from Alex and Jessica, and the full chain of events. She also initiated a title correction process to remove Jessica and Alex's names entirely from any record tied to my property. It would take time, but it would be thorough. Brenda Linden from County Social stopped by again. This time, unannounced. She stood at my front door looking less polished than before. Hair loose, cardigan over her suit. I offered her a chair, and this time I didn't serve banana bread. Just black coffee and a hard chair. I read your attorney's submission, she said finally, and I wanted to apologize. I should have asked more questions. You asked what they wanted you to ask. She flinched, just slightly. I'm not senile, Brenda. Just quiet. There's a difference. She nodded slowly. You were right to record the follow-up. I forwarded it to the ethics board. I believed her. Maybe she'd been played too. That afternoon, I pulled the last piece into place. I logged into my bank's website and removed Jessica as a secondary on the emergency account. Then I called the broker I used in New Mexico and confirmed the date of sale for the other house. I'll be there by the end of the month, I told him. That night, I didn't sleep, but not because of fear. Something else had settled inside me. Not a stone this time. Something lighter. Like wind. The next morning, I recorded a video on my phone. No fancy setup. Just me, sitting on the back porch with the sycamore tree behind me. I spoke calmly. No anger, no bitterness, just the facts. I explained what had happened, how my daughter and son-in-law had tried to erase me with a signature, how they bet on my silence and my age, how wrong they were. I uploaded it to a small Facebook group run by Marta's nephew. He manages a page for local seniors, housing updates, and community alerts. Marta said it might help someone else. I agreed. Within 24 hours, it had over 5,000 shares. Comments poured in. Other women, other families, strangers offering support. One woman said her nephew did the same thing to her father in Michigan. Another said, "You're braver than I'll ever be." A small local reporter messaged me. "Would you be open to an interview?" I declined. The video was enough. I didn't need a microphone to validate what I'd already done. But something had shifted. The story was no longer just mine. It was happening everywhere. And somehow, that made me feel less alone. Jessica sent one more message. This time it wasn't a voicemail. Just a text. Why are you doing this? I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because she didn't deserve to hear it. 2 weeks later, I stood in what used to be Paul's closet, his side, the left, fitting the last of my things into a single rolling suitcase. The room smelled like cedar and old aftershave, and I let myself linger there longer than necessary. Folded my nightgowns with care, ran a hand over the small wooden box where I kept my Medicare card, old photos, and the last letter he wrote me from the hospital. The rest of the house was already empty of me. I'd gone room by room, quiet as a whisper, stripping away anything that tethered me. Old bills shredded, bank records sorted, jewelry boxed, and delivered to the safety deposit vault downtown. I even packed the rhubarb seeds. I might not plant them again, but I liked the idea of having them with me. Something stubborn and bitter that still grew. The deal on the house had closed that morning, not to a developer, not to some faceless LLC, but to a retired couple with grandkids and matching bicycles. They'd pay market price. No tricks. No one pretending I didn't exist. Franklin made sure of it. The funds went straight into a trust, this time with only one name, mine. Jessica didn't know yet. I hadn't told her. Let her think I was sulking in the guest room or baking another batch of banana bread to make peace. Let her twist in the quiet of not knowing what came next. I locked the front door, slid the keys into an envelope marked New Owners, and left it taped to the fridge. Then I rolled my suitcase down the walkway to where a small blue Uber waited. The driver looked about 12, but he smiled kindly and loaded my things without question. "Airport?" he asked. "Please." We drove past the elementary school, where Jessica once cried after losing her first tooth, past the park where Paul used to walk laps with that ridiculous floppy hat, past the community center where I once taught chair yoga before my back gave up. Each block peeled away like skin from an old fruit. At the airport I moved slow, not because of my joints, though they complained plenty, but because I wanted to memorize the moment. The gate, the weight of the boarding pass, the freedom. The flight was uneventful. A little turbulence, a crying baby behind me, which I didn't mind. I found the sound oddly comforting. In New Mexico, a cab took me to the address I'd memorized months ago. 2 bedrooms, white stucco, red door, porch swing. It looked just like the photo, like I remembered from that day 3 months back when I'd met the realtor in secret and signed the paperwork using my maiden name, just in case. The key worked the first time. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of fresh paint and sunlight. On the kitchen table was a note from the realtor. "Welcome home, Helen. The place is stocked with essentials. See you next week." There was milk in the fridge, crackers in the pantry, a folded quilt on the couch. I took off my shoes, poured myself a glass of lemon water, and stepped out onto the porch. The air was dry, full of bird song and wind that didn't bite like it did back east. Across the road, a woman was watering her garden. She waved. I waved back. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Mom, please. Can we talk? We messed up. I know. But this public stuff, it's too much." I stared at the message. Not out of indecision, but out of recognition. She still thought this was a game, that I was bluffing, that I'd be back for Thanksgiving with a casserole and an apology. I turned off the phone, set it face down, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I closed my eyes and didn't feel like I had to keep one open. Sometimes to become yourself again, you have to disappear from the version they made of you. And I was gone.